The mining colony on the edge of human space was quiet, almost too quiet. The sun of the red dwarf star cast long shadows over the jagged crystal mountains, turning them into sharp, glimmering teeth. Humans had been working here for weeks, harvesting rare energy crystals that were worth more than gold back on Earth. The colony itself was small, just a cluster of metal domes and landing pads, but it hummed with the quiet industry of life. Lieutenant Mara walked among the miners, her boots crunching over the jagged, crystalline ground. She'd always loved this view, the endless horizon, the way the crystals caught the light, refracting it into a million tiny rainbows. But today, something felt wrong. A knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She noticed it first. A flicker in the sky. Something moved too fast to be a shuttle, too precise to be a meteor. Her heart skipped a beat. "They're here," she whispered, the words barely audible against the hum of the colony. The aliens hit without warning. One moment the sky was calm, the next, a beam of brilliant blue energy sliced through the air, smashing a mining rig into a shower of molten sparks. Miners screamed and scattered, their shouts swallowed by the sudden chaos. Mara dove behind a massive crystal spire, her pulse racing, the ground vibrating under her palms. Explosions shook the earth around her, throwing dust and rock high into the thin atmosphere. The colony's automated defense turrets sputtered to life, spitting plasma bolts into the sky. But the alien ships moved too fast, too erratically. They didn't just attack, they hunted. Sleek, dark ships darted between the rocky spires, scanning, targeting, and striking with chilling, deadly precision. Mara's communicator buzzed, a sharp static cutting through the noise. Commander Raines's voice, strained but steady, broke through the chaos. "Evacuate the civilians, hold the line if you can. Get to the station." Mara grabbed a miner, a young man named Jaren whose face was pale with terror, and pulled him toward the main dome. The air sizzled around them, scorched by the heat of the alien blasts. Jaren stumbled and Mara hauled him back to his feet, her own breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind them another beam hit the dome they had just left. Dust and metal rained down, and she had to shout over the roaring energy. "They're not just attacking, they're hunting us," Mara yelled, her eyes wide as she scanned the sky, trying to track the impossible movements of the enemy ships. Inside the main dome, the survivors gathered, panic etched on every face. Some cried silently. Others were frozen, staring into space, their minds unable to process the horror unfolding outside. Mara could feel the tension in her chest, a tight knot that refused to loosen. Commander Raines appeared at the front of the group, his presence a small island of calm in the sea of fear. He was tall, strong, and his face, though grim, was resolute. "They expect fear," he said, his voice quiet but carrying across the cavernous space. "But fear will not save us. Get to the escape pods, move fast." Mara took charge, leading Jaren and a small group of miners toward the docking bay. The alien ships hovered above, their silent forms casting long, menacing shadows. Some were small and sleek, almost invisible against the dark sky. Others were massive, like floating fortresses, their hulls black and angular. One of the larger ships paused directly above the colony, its shadow swallowing the landscape. Mara's stomach twisted. It seemed to be waiting for something, observing. The survivors reached the escape pods. Mara helped a frantic Jaren strap himself in, then took a deep, shaky breath. She knew the pods weren't designed for combat. They were fragile, little more than tin cans meant for emergencies, but they were all they had. With a lurch, the pods lifted off, shaking violently under the pressure of the ongoing alien attacks. Mara's pod rocketed into the sky, the pilot desperately weaving between bursts of alien fire. From the corner of her eye, she saw the massive ship again. Its weapons glowed faintly, a malevolent energy waiting to be unleashed. A chill ran down her spine. This was a test, a hunt, and humans were the prey. Her pod joined the others in the frantic evacuation route. The sky was a canvas of chaos, fiery trails, shattered crystals, and smoke rising from the burning colony like dark, mournful clouds. Mara gripped the console, her knuckles white, trying to focus. trying to think past the adrenaline and fear. She could hear Commander Rains in her earpiece, his voice a lifeline. Keep moving. Don't stop. They'll tire. They always do. The small fleet of human pods flew through the canyon, dodging relentless alien fire. Explosions rocked the landscape, sending shockwaves that rattled the pod's frame. One pod just ahead of them was hit, spinning out of control. Mara flinched as it slammed into the rocks below, a brilliant, final flash of light. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not yet. Suddenly, the massive alien ship shifted, turning slowly, as if scanning the fleeing pods with an intelligent, patient gaze. Mara felt a strange mix of terror and awe. These creatures. They were smarter than anyone had ever anticipated. They weren't just brutes with powerful weapons, they were patient, careful, and terrifyingly precise. And yet, there was a sense of arrogance in their movements, a palpable belief that humans could not and would not fight back. Mara's mind raced. She thought of the colony, now a ruin. She thought of the miners, the families, all the lives extinguished in a matter of minutes. She thought of the humans still on the planet, still fighting for their lives. And in that moment of despair, a spark of defiance ignited within her. She realized something crucial. They had been underestimated. Her pod finally broke through the last canyon and into the vastness of open space. The burning colony was now just a fading, angry speck behind them. Mara exhaled, her hands trembling on the console. She looked out at the stars, dark and endless, and knew with a chilling certainty that this was just the beginning. They think they can hunt us, she whispered to the silence of her cockpit, her voice filled with a newfound steel. They have no idea what's coming. The Pod-S rear camera caught the alien ship one last time before it disappeared into the distance. Its black hull gleamed, massive and ominous, a dark promise of the war that was about to unfold. Mara tightened her grip on the controls. Somewhere deep inside, she knew humans would fight back. They always did, and somewhere, deep within that alien ship, someone was already noticing. The hunt had begun. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the edge of space. I'll see you in the next one. The pods drifted in a graveyard of starlight and debris, shaking with the aftershocks of a world torn apart. Below them, their home, the mining colony, was a gaping wound, a scar carved into the planet's surface by an unseen, merciless enemy. Lieutenant Mara floated in the quiet dark of her escape pod, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Each beat was an echo of the screams she couldn't silence, the faces of miners she couldn't save. The terror was a cold physical thing wrapping around her throat, but beneath the ice of fear a spark stubbornly refused to die, a flicker of defiance. On the orbital station, a silent metal giant hanging above the desecrated world, the last remnants of humanity gathered. The station was their ark, its steel hull a fragile shield against the void, its life support systems humming a low, steady prayer. Commander Rains moved through the survivors huddled in the central corridor. His presence was a pillar of calm in the swirling chaos of their minds. His eyes, missing nothing, swept across their faces, faces etched with loss and disbelief. They expected fear, he began, his voice cutting through the tense silence, not loud, but absolute. They expected us to shatter, to panic. But we are not prey. We are not just survivors. Not anymore. Mara gripped a cold metal railing, the adrenaline from the ambush finally draining away, leaving a hard residue of pure, unyielding resolve. Rains's words were the anchor she didn't know she needed. He continued, his gaze locking with hers for a moment. These invaders, whoever they are, believe humans are simple, predictable. They think we follow patterns, that our only instinct is to run and hide. A grim smile touched his lips. They are about to be proven wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was a question, a sliver of hope. They had been hunted, picked off from the sky with terrifying precision. But now, in the aftermath, a new reality was dawning. They had survived. And in survival there was knowledge. They had seen the enemy. They knew how they moved, how they struck. This was their advantage. In the command room, the blue glow of holographic displays painted shadows on the walls. Intricate models of the alien fleet rotated in the air, each vessel meticulously mapped, scanned, and catalogued from the brief, frantic data they had collected during the attack. Mara leaned forward, her eyes tracing the ballet of destruction. She saw something others had missed. "Look," she said, her voice a low murmur. "The smaller ships. They move in swarms, like insects. Fast, agile, but their formations are rigid, almost programmed." Her finger traced the path of the colossal mothership, the one that had blotted out the sun over the colony. A dark god dispensing judgment. It held back, observing, a predator confident in its kill. "They're cautious," Mara realized aloud. "They're not just destroying us, they're studying us, learning our reactions." Rains nodded, his face a mask in the holographic light. "Exactly. And we will teach them a lesson they can't afford to unlearn." As if on cue, a deep, resonant hum vibrated through the steel floor plates, a sound more felt than heard. Mara turned. There, occupying a massive section of the station's armature, was the railgun. It was a dormant beast, its long barrel aimed at the star-dusted blackness. It had never been fired in combat. Its power was theoretical, a monster born in simulations and whispered about by engineers. The aliens, in all their arrogant power, had no idea it existed. A shiver, part fear and part exhilaration, ran down Mara's spine. This weapon wasn't just for defense. It was a statement. It was a declaration of war. Rains's voice sliced through her thoughts, sharp and decisive. "We strike first, but not with brute force. We strike with strategy. This is how humanity has always fought. We adapt. We improvise. We use our enemy's strength against them." He gestured to a display showing the energy signatures of the alien ships. "These creatures rely on flawless coordination. They believe our chaos is a weakness. We will show them that chaos can be a weapon." The station, once a tomb of shock and grief, sprang to life. A quiet, focused energy replaced the despair. Every survivor became a soldier, a technician, an engineer. Every hand found a purpose. Mara took her station at the railgun's targeting console, her hands surprisingly steady as she began the complex calculations for the firing solution. Every variable, every decimal point, was the difference between survival and annihilation. The station hummed with this newfound purpose, a stark contrast to the silent, watching terror that hung in the void just outside their windows. Hours bled into one another. The alien fleet remained, a patient, infuriating presence in orbit. Their stillness was a psychological assault, a constant reminder of their overwhelming power. Mara couldn't help but wonder what the great dark ship was thinking. Its silent shadow felt sentient, as if it were dissecting their every move, predicting their every thought. Then, the order came, broadcast across the station's internal comms, Rains's voice calm and lethal. "Prepare the railgun. Final targeting sequence. We do not fire until the moment is perfect. Wait for their arrogance to give us an opening." Mara rested her fingers on the cold metal of the console. She looked out at the starfield, at the distant, glittering menace of the fleet. She imagined them in their sterile command centers, confident in their analysis, classifying humans as broken, terrified creatures ready to be swept aside. And in that moment, a feeling bloomed in her chest, something that a lesser soul might call madness. It was pure, undiluted confidence. They would not just survive, they would fight back. And these hunters, these gods of the dark, would never know what hit them. As the orbital station drifted silently above the shattered remains of their home, Mara gazed at the enemy and saw not an end, but a beginning. The aliens thought they held all the cards, that they were in control of the game. But humans had a habit of flipping the table. When you pushed them into a corner, they didn't just cower, They rewrote the rules. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Almost a whisper, a promise to the void, she breathed. Let them come. We are ready. Deep within the alien command structure, light years from any world it had ever known, sensors on the massive ship flickered with new data. An unexpected energy signature, a deviation from the predicted patterns of human despair. The colossal vessel shifted, its hull emitting a low, curious thrum. Perhaps it was a warning. Perhaps it was simple curiosity. To Mara, watching the data stream in, it felt like the first tremor of fear. The trap was set. The counterplan was in motion, and the railgun was ready to sing. The alien fleet hung in orbit, a silent, deadly storm cloud poised above us. Hours earlier, Mara's pod had docked with the station, and since then, a frenetic energy had consumed every human on board. We worked tirelessly, a blur of motion against the cold, metallic backdrop. Every console blinked with critical readings, every screen flickered with the movements of the enemy, and the frantic thrum of our own heartbeats seemed to echo through the corridors. Commander Rains stood on the bridge, a pillar of calm amidst the controlled chaos. His hands rested lightly on the railgun's targeting interface, a weapon that was our last, best hope. His voice when he spoke was steady but laced with ice. We don't just fight back, he said, his gaze fixed on the main viewport. We make them regret ever underestimating humans. I followed his gaze, watching the alien ships. Small scouts, sleek and predatory, darted through the void like angry hornets. But it was the massive ship looming behind them that held my attention. Its black hull seemed to drink the light, a living shadow that radiated pure menace. It hadn't attacked yet. Maybe it was arrogant. Maybe it thought we were trapped, helpless. Lieutenant, Rains said, turning his head just enough to meet my eyes. It was Mara he was addressing. The first strike is yours. Target the lead scout. Make it count. Mara's breath caught, her pulse quickening. She'd spent countless hours poring over the calculations, memorizing the railgun's power, its speed, its breathtaking accuracy. But no one had ever fired it in real combat. This one shot could change the entire course of the war, or it could cripple the station, dooming us all. She slid her hands onto the console, the smooth, cool surface humming with raw energy. Outside, the alien scouts continued their patrol, moving in a tight, predictable formation. Mara took a slow, deliberate breath, her focus narrowing until nothing existed but the target and the trigger. She exhaled, and the railgun fired. The sound wasn't a deafening roar. It was a whisper, a deep vibration that shuddered through the station's deck plates. It was a surge of power that made the floor tremble beneath our feet. A single projectile, glowing with harnessed energy, shot from the barrel like a miniature comet. It streaked across the blackness of space, faster than the eye could possibly follow, and struck the lead alien scout. There was no fiery explosion, no brilliant fireball, just a profound echoing silence. And then the scout began to disintegrate. It came apart piece by piece as if erased from existence, until absolutely nothing remained. Mara's eyes widened in disbelief. The other scouts faltered, their perfect formation breaking as confusion rippled through their ranks. The massive ship in the distance seemed to shift, its sensors sweeping the area. But it was too late. Humanity had made its first move, and it was devastatingly effective. Rains's voice, crisp and sharp, crackled over the station-wide intercom. Good. Now keep them off balance, every shot counts. Make them think twice about every move they make. As if on cue, the entire station shuddered as our coordinated attack began. Missiles streaked from their launch tubes, plasma bolts seared through the void, and the deep hum of the railgun echoed again and again, each shot a testament to human precision. The alien fleet was stunned. We could see it in their erratic movements. Their tactics were built on predictable patterns, on overwhelming force against a cowering enemy. But humans, we were unpredictable. Mara could see it reflected in the readings from their own sensors, their confusion, their hesitation. That was our opening. But the massive ship, the flagship, still held back. It remained silent, a calculating predator observing the chaos, learning from our every move. I felt a shiver trace its way down my spine. It hadn't fired a single shot, but I could feel its presence, a cold, immense weight pressing down on us. "Lieutenant," Rain said quietly, his voice now a low murmur beside her. "Prepare for the flagship. It's time." Mara's hands tightened on the controls. Her mind raced, rechecking calculations, her focus sharper than ever. This was more than just a battle for survival. This was a message written in fire and steel across the stars. Humans were not prey. We were hunters too. The railgun fired again, a brilliant streak of light cut through the void, aimed squarely at the heart of the enemy fleet. The massive ship shuddered violently as the projectile struck its outer hull, carving a long, smoking gouge across its dark surface. The aliens had expected chaos and desperation. They had not expected this level of accuracy, this power, this unyielding resolve. Mara stepped back from the console, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The first strike had been a resounding success, but she knew, we all knew, the battle was far from over. The aliens would regroup. They would adapt. They would strike back with a fury we could barely imagine. But we had made our mark. For the first time since their arrival, the shadow of that massive alien ship was broken by the fire of human defiance. A small, defiant smile touched Mara's lips. They had underestimated humans, and that was their first and final mistake. What an incredible opening to a story. The tension, the strategy, the pure sci-fi action, it's just epic. If you enjoyed this dive into humanity's desperate stand, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories like this. Let me know in the comments what you think the aliens will do next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The void of space stretched endlessly before the orbital station, a canvas of calm yet deadly beauty. I stood at the railgun console, my fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't fear, but a surge of pure anticipation. Our first strike had shocked the aliens, but I knew the real challenge was just beginning. "Ready the main railgun," Commander Raines's voice echoed through the bridge, steady and resolute. "This is it. One shot. Maximum effect." Outside, the alien fleet was regrouping. Their massive flagship sat at the center, a dark, silent predator that had sensed its prey's audacity. Smaller ships moved in protective circles around it, but we had learned their patterns. Every movement was predictable. Every attack could be countered. My eyes were locked on the targeting display. The distance was immense, hundreds of kilometers, and yet, the railgun could close that gap in mere seconds. I focused on that massive alien ship, the very one that had loomed over the mining colony like a god of destruction. Its black hull glimmered faintly in the distant starlight, a stark reminder of what we were up against. "Lieutenant Mara," Commander Raines said, his voice cutting through the tension. "You are the first human to ever fire this weapon in combat. Make it count. Make it unforgettable." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I aligned the railgun with meticulous care, double-checking the calculations, then triple-checking them. One shot, and everything could change. The silence on the bridge became deafening. The station hummed around me, alive with a shared, unspoken tension. Every human on board was waiting, holding their breath with me. I fired. The railgun's energy surged violently. The low hum built into a piercing scream that shook the entire station to its core. A glowing projectile streaked across the blackness of space, moving faster than anything the aliens could possibly anticipate. I held my breath as it tore through the void, an unstoppable, precise spear of human defiance. The massive alien ship erupted. Hull plates tore apart like paper. Energy shields flickered and failed, sending streams of sparks cascading across its surface. The smaller ships scattered in a blind panic, unable to comprehend the sudden, overwhelming destruction. I could hardly believe my eyes. The railgun hadn't just damaged it, it had shattered the aliens' confidence. "Direct hit," Raines said, his voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper. They didn't see that coming. I exhaled slowly, my hands still gripping the controls. The aliens were clever, but we humans, We were relentless. Their fleet tried to reorganize, but the railgun's incredible reach forced them into a constant retreat. Every maneuver they attempted was anticipated, countered, and destroyed. The flagship, wounded but not dead, attempted to fire back. Blazing energy beams streaked toward our station. But my crew and I had prepared for this. Our shields flared to life, missiles launched in interception patterns, and the railgun hummed again, a silent promise of retribution. Another shot tore through the flagship's wing, ripping through vital systems and disabling its engines. A quiet cheer rippled through the bridge, but I didn't allow myself to relax. This was just the first wave. The aliens would adapt. They would learn. They would strike again, smarter and deadlier than before. But for now, for this moment, victory felt real. Commander Rains placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "You see, Lieutenant, humans are unpredictable. We do what they cannot imagine. We do what they will never expect. We survive, and we fight back." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the smoke and sparks drifting in the vacuum of space. The alien fleet was scattered, but their massive ship still loomed, damaged, but alive. It was a dark promise that this war had only just begun. In that moment, I realized something crucial. The railgun was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol, a statement. It declared to the universe that humans would not bow. Humans would not hide. Humans would rise, against any and all odds. And I knew that somewhere, in the cold, deep shadows of space, the alien commanders were frantically recalculating. They had just learned their first painful lesson. Humans were far, far deadlier than they had ever imagined. The railgun hummed softly beside me, ready for the next shot. I felt a surge of confidence wash over me. Humanity had just taken its first real step into the fight. The battlefield of space had changed forever, and the humans, we had awakened. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to see where the fight goes next, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. See you in the next one. The void of space had grown darker since the railgun first fired. Mara floated in the observation deck, watching the stars streak by as the orbital station drifted silently through the cosmos. The human fleet had survived the first brutal strike, and the aliens had scattered, but Mara knew better. This wasn't a retreat, it was a regrouping. "They're regrouping," Commander Rains said, his voice cutting through the tense hum of the station like a knife. "They'll hunt us, and they'll be smarter this time." Mara's heart tightened. She could feel it in her bones. The massive alien flagship had survived, damaged, but not destroyed. Out in the blackness, smaller alien ships zipped through the void like swarming predators, scanning, searching for the humans who had dared to strike back. Our first hit had surprised them. We caught them off guard. But the second encounter? That would be entirely different. "We can't just wait," Mara insisted, her eyes locked on the glowing sensor readouts. "If we sit here, they'll pick us off one by one." Rains nodded, his expression grim. "I agree. We go to them. We find them before they find us." And so we did. We launched a fleet of small, fast ships, fighters designed for swift hit-and-run attacks. Mara found herself leading one of the squads, her hands gripping the controls of her vessel. She expertly weaved her ship through treacherous asteroid fields, using the massive rocks as cover, staying in the shadows, and striking only when they had the absolute advantage. Every single encounter was a test of skill, a trial by fire. Every alien ship was a deadly opponent, more advanced, more powerful. We managed to destroy a scout ship, then another, but each victory came at a terrible cost. Explosions rocked our small fleet, sending debris spinning through the void like deadly superheated hail. Mara watched as friends fell. She saw ships she'd trained on, crews she'd shared meals with, simply vanish in a flash of light. Engineers, soldiers, pilots, some would never return to the station. Their names would be added to a growing list of heroes. And yet, we pressed on. We had no other choice. During a brief lull in the fighting, as her team made emergency repairs, Mara noticed something strange in the alien ship's energy patterns. It was subtle, a slight hum, a frequency almost invisible to our standard sensors, but it was there. She rerouted power, boosting the sensitivity of her scanners. They're using some kind of unified energy field, Mara muttered to herself, her fingers flying across the console. Their ships. Their entire fleet depends on it. Maybe that's the key. Rains leaned over her shoulder, his eyes scanning the complex data she'd pulled up. If we can exploit that, if we can somehow turn their own power against them, then we might have a real chance. The aliens were hunting humans, but we were hunters too. Mara's mind raced, connecting the dots. Every movement the aliens made revealed more of their strategy. Every strike we launched taught us about their weaknesses. Hours blurred into a tense, beautiful, and terrifying ballet of survival. The constant alarm klaxons, the percussive thud of explosions against their hull, and the distant, reassuring hum of the station's railgun shots echoed through the human ships. Mara's hands moved over the controls with a practiced, almost instinctive precision, dodging incoming fire, firing back, calculating risks faster than most people could even see them. Her ship felt like an extension of her own body. Finally, the opportunity came. They cornered a small group of alien ships near a dense cluster of floating asteroids. It was a perfect ambush point. Mara and her squad moved silently through the shadows of the massive rocks, their engines cold, waiting for the perfect moment. "Hold your fire," Mara whispered into her comms, her voice barely audible. "Wait for it. Wait." Then, with a blinding flash, the humans struck. Missiles streaked from their launch tubes, trails of fire cutting through the darkness. Energy beams, concentrated and deadly, tore through alien shields. And high above, the railgun hummed from the station, a distant but lethal warning. Alien ships erupted in silent, brilliant flames, spinning helplessly into the void before imploding. But the massive flagship remained, a silent giant watching from a distance, calculating, learning from our tactics. Mara knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The hunt had evolved into a deadly game of cat and mouse, and humanity was now both prey and predator. As her squad regrouped, taking stock of their ammunition and damage, Mara spoke quietly to herself, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. "We've learned their weakness. Now we use it. We turn their greatest strength into their downfall." Rains's voice crackled through the comms, steady and commanding. "Prepare the next move, Mara. They won't wait forever, and neither will we." Mara stared out into the endless, star-dusted darkness, thinking of the mining colony that was lost, the families torn apart, and the countless humans still fighting for their very existence. Somewhere out there, the massive alien ship loomed, waiting for its chance to annihilate them. But humanity was not waiting anymore. We were striking back, smarter, faster, and deadlier than ever before. The alien hunt had begun, but Mara knew one thing for certain. This time humans would make the rules, and the predators would soon realize we were not to be underestimated. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. See you in the void. The deep, endless silence of space was broken only by the low, anxious hum of human ships. We were hiding, nestled among the scarred and silent asteroids, a ghost fleet holding its breath. The alien hunt had slowed, but none of us were foolish enough to believe it was over. Out there in the star-dusted black, they were watching, waiting for us to make one fatal mistake. Commander Rains stood before the holographic map of the asteroid field, his face a mask of grim determination. The glow of the holo display cast long shadows across the command deck. A swarm of angry red lights pulsed on the map, marking the alien vessels closing in. Against them, a handful of lonely blue lights represented us, the last flickering embers of the human fleet. The odds were still terrifying, stacked against us in every conceivable way. But this time, we had a plan. "They rely on their energy field," I explained, my voice echoing slightly in the tense quiet of the bridge. I pointed a trembling finger at the glowing alien signatures on the map. "It connects every single ship in their fleet. It's what makes them so fast, so coordinated, but it also makes them predictable. If we can find a way to overload that connection..." Rains nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the hollow map, tracing the intricate web of energy that bound our enemy together. A flicker of understanding, of dangerous hope, crossed his features. "We break their network," he finished, his voice a low growl. "We blind them." The plan was audacious. It was simple, elegant, and terrifyingly risky. We would act as bait, luring the alien fleet deep into the densest part of the asteroid field. We'd force their massive, unwieldy ships into tight, treacherous corridors where their size would become a liability, not an advantage. Then, from a hidden orbital station, we'd use the railgun, a single, supercharged projectile, aimed not at a ship, but at a specific asteroid. The resulting electromagnetic pulse would, in theory, cascade through the aliens' shared energy network, causing a system-wide collapse. If it worked, the aliens would lose all coordination, all control, for a precious few moments, long enough for us to strike. If it failed, we would be wiped out before we even knew what hit us. There would be no second chances. "Failure is not an option," Rains said, his voice quiet but ringing with absolute resolve. He turned to me, his gaze piercing. "The fate of our species rests on this, Mara." I took my position in the cockpit of my fighter, the Vindicator. My hands felt slick on the controls as I led my small squad into the asteroid maze. The massive rocks drifted silently around us, their pockmarked surfaces glowing faintly in the reflected starlight. Their jagged edges looked like teeth, and every deep shadow felt like a tomb, a place where death could be hiding. "Squad Alpha in position," I reported, my voice tight but steady over the comms. I could hear the controlled breathing of my wingmen, a chorus of shared courage. "We're ready." And then they appeared. Blips on the sensors at first, then dozens of them, resolving into the sleek, menacing shapes of alien hunters. They closed in with terrifying speed, and behind them a shadow that blotted out the stars. The massive flagship lingered, its hull like a black mountain against the cosmos. Even without seeing it directly, I could feel its immense, arrogant presence. "Now," Rains ordered. The command was sharp, a crack of thunder in the silence. Instantly, our ships roared to life. Engines flared, and we darted between the asteroids like desperate fireflies. We fired short, provocative bursts of plasma, deliberately drawing their attention, and they took the bait. The aliens followed, their powerful energy weapons slicing through stone and debris, carving glowing scars into the ancient rock. The trap was working. They were entering the kill box. "Keep them close," I shouted into the comms, my ship bucking as a stray blast vaporized an asteroid just meters from my cockpit. "Closer, closer. Let them think they have us." We danced on a razor's edge, the asteroid field a chaotic ballet of explosions and near misses. The aliens, confident in their numbers and power, pressed in relentlessly, their formation tightening just as we'd hoped. At that precise moment on the far side of the asteroid field, the hidden orbital station came alive. The railgun, our desperate ace in the hole, began its charging sequence. A blinding light grew at its core, glowing brighter than a small sun, a beacon of defiance in the dark. The gunner's voice, impossibly calm, crackled over the channel. "Target locked, firing in 3, 2, 1, fire." The shot was silent, a tear in the fabric of space itself. It moved faster than our sensors could track, a ghost of pure kinetic energy. It didn't hit a ship. It wasn't meant to. It struck a precisely chosen asteroid right in the heart of the alien formation. The resulting explosion was not just physical but electromagnetic. A shock wave of raw energy erupted outwards, invisible but devastating. I watched on my display as the intricate web connecting the alien ships flickered, stuttered, and then, in a glorious cascade of system failures, collapsed entirely. "Now!" Rains's voice was a triumphant roar across every channel. "All ships attack!" It was as if a dam had broken. From every shadow, from behind every asteroid, human ships emerged, unleashing hell. Missiles, plasma bolts, and secondary railgun slugs filled the sky. The aliens' perfect coordination was shattered. Confusion reigned. Their ships, now untethered from the collective network, spun out of control, crashing into asteroids or, even better, colliding with each other. My squad and I dived through the beautiful chaos, our cannons blazing, firing at anything that moved. Through the maelstrom of light and wreckage, I saw it. The massive flagship, trying desperately to stabilize, its systems flickering in panic. The arrogance was gone. Now it just looked vulnerable. "Commander, the flagship's shields are down, their core is exposed," I yelled, my heart hammering against my ribs. Rains hesitated for only a fraction of a second. The weight of his next command was immense, but his voice was clear. "Take the shot, Mara, end this." I wrenched my ship around, lining up my targeting system. Across the field, the orbital railgun swiveled, its barrel aiming at the heart of the crippled alien fleet. I took a deep, shuddering breath, a flash of memory searing through my mind. The colony, the screams, the fire that had taken everything from me. "This is for them," I whispered, my thumb hovering over the firing stud. I fired. The final projectile streaked across the void, a blinding flash of white and gold light. It slammed into the alien flagship, a needle of pure destruction. It cut through reinforced metal and collapsing energy shields as if they were paper. The explosion that followed was biblical. It lit up the entire asteroid field, a nova of fire and fury that momentarily turned night into day. Debris and flames scattered across the black canvas of space. And then, for a long moment, everything was silent again. A stunned, breathless silence. Slowly. Then, all at once, the communication channels erupted with human cheers. Screams of joy, of relief, of victory. The remaining alien fleet, their command structure decapitated, broke formation and began a panicked retreat. Their legendary arrogance shattered into a million pieces. I stared at the burning, skeletal remains of the flagship, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My hands were shaking. "We did it," I said softly, the words feeling unreal. "We actually did it." Rains's voice came over the comms, steady and strong, but filled with a quiet, profound pride that resonated with every soul listening. "This isn't the end of the war. But today, humanity stands tall. We had turned the tide." The barrel of the great railgun still glowed faintly, wisps of vapor drifting from its core like smoke from a titan's breath. It was more than a weapon now. It was a symbol, a testament to what we could achieve when pushed to the very edge of extinction. And somewhere in the vast, cold distance, beyond the wreckage and the triumphant silence, a faint signal echoed in a strange, alien language. It was a warning, a vow, a promise. They would return. But next time, we would be ready. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another journey into the cosmos. Until next time, stay curious. In the deepest void of space, a hushed anticipation hung heavy amongst the asteroid fields. Here, what remained of humanity's fleet lay in wait, cloaked by rock and shadow. The relentless alien hunt had paused, but it was far from over. Mara knew this in her bones. The enemy was out there, patient, watching for a single fatal mistake. On the bridge of the command ship, Commander Rains stood before a holographic map, his face etched in the glow of tactical data. A swarm of red lights, the alien armada was methodically tightening its net. Scattered amongst them, a few lonely blue lights represented the last human vessels. The odds were still terrifyingly slim, but this time, they weren't just running. This time, they had a plan. Mara's voice cut through the tension. She gestured at the glowing alien signatures on the map. "They rely on their energy field," she explained, her tone sharp and focused. "It links every single ship, creating a single cohesive network. It's what makes them so fast, so coordinated, but it also makes them predictable. If we can overload that connection..." Rains's gaze followed her finger, a slow, calculating nod, acknowledging the terrifying brilliance of the idea. "We break their network, he finished, his voice a low gravel. We blind them. The plan was a masterclass in simplicity and monumental risk. They would bait the alien fleet into the densest part of the asteroid field, forcing their massive warships into tight, treacherous corridors where their size became a liability. Then, from a hidden orbital station, the newly completed railgun would fire a specially charged projectile, not at a ship, but into the network itself. If it worked, the alien fleet would be momentarily paralyzed. If it failed, it would be their final act. Failure is not an option, Rains stated, the words hanging in the air like a final command. Strapped into her cockpit, Mara led her small squadron into the labyrinth of rock and ice. The asteroids drifted silently, their jagged surfaces catching the faint, distant starlight. Every shadow was a potential tomb. Squad Alpha in position, she reported, her voice steady over the comms. We're ready to dance. As if on cue, the alien ships blazed onto their sensors, dozens of them closing with predatory speed. Behind them, the colossal flagship loitered, a black mountain blotting out the stars, its sheer presence a palpable threat. Now, Rains ordered. Human engines roared to life. Ships darted between asteroids, firing short, provocative bursts of plasma. The bait was taken. The aliens surged forward, their energy weapons tearing through stone, sending debris flying. The trap was sprung. Keep them close, Mara commanded, her knuckles white on the controls. Closer. Just a little closer. At the perfect moment, the orbital station, hidden on the far side of the field, came alive. The railgun began its charging sequence, its core glowing brighter than a newborn sun. Target locked, a voice crackled from the gunnery station. Firing. The shot was silent, a streak of pure energy that ripped through the void faster than any sensor could track. It didn't strike a ship, it impacted a designated asteroid right in the heart of the alien formation. The resulting explosion sent a cataclysmic shockwave through their energy field. The seamless connection between the alien ships flickered, it stuttered, and then it shattered. Now! Rains's roar filled the comms. All units attack! Chaos erupted. From every shadow, from every angle, the human fleet struck. Missiles, plasma bolts, and railgun slugs painted the darkness with streaks of light. The alien ships, once a perfectly coordinated force, now spun helplessly, crashing into asteroids and each other. Their hive mind was broken. Confusion was their new commander. Mara's ship dove through the maelstrom, her cannons blazing at anything that moved. Through the debris, she saw the massive flagship trying to stabilize, its systems flashing in a panic. The arrogance was gone. Now, it just looked desperate. Commander, the flagship's shields are down. They're exposed, she shouted, her voice tight with adrenaline. Rains's hesitation was barely a microsecond. Take the shot, Mara. End this. Mara slammed her targeting system into place, aligning the crosshairs. The railgun, now aimed at the very heart of the alien fleet, began to whine as it recharged for the killing blow. She took a deep breath, images of burning colonies, the sound of screams, the taste of ash, flooding her mind. This is for them, she whispered. She fired. The projectile crossed the void in a blinding flash of white and gold. It hit the alien flagship and didn't stop, tearing through layers of exotic metal and sophisticated systems as if they were paper. The ensuing explosion was magnificent and terrible, a nova of fire and light that illuminated the entire asteroid field. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the comms channels erupted in a wave of triumphant human cheers. The remaining alien fleet, its command structure decapitated, broke formation and began to retreat. Their predatory confidence shattered into a million pieces. Mara stared at the burning skeletal remains of the flagship, her breath catching in her throat. We did it, she said, her voice barely a whisper. We actually did it. Rains's voice came over the comms, steady and strong, but layered with a profound, quiet pride. This isn't the end, Mara. But today humanity stands tall. The tide had turned. The railgun's barrel still glowed a faint, angry red, wisps of smoke drifting from its magnetic coils. It was more than a weapon now. It was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. And somewhere in the vast, cold distance, beyond the wreckage and the silence, a faint signal echoed in a guttural alien tongue. A warning. A vow. They would return. Looking at the monument to their victory, Rains spoke. They always do. But this time, we know how to fight back. Outside the viewport, the first rays of a nearby sun caught the twisted metal of the alien wreckage, turning them into a shower of golden sparks. It was beautiful, like the first light after a long and violent storm. Mara spoke softly, almost to herself. They called us weak. They thought fear would break us. Rains's reply was calm, a declaration of unbending truth. They learned that humans don't break. We adapt, we survive, and when the time comes, we strike back. In the distance, the railgun cooled, silent and still. But for every human who saw it, it sparked the same feelings: hope, defiance, strength. The final entry in the fleet's transmission log for that day was simple: Operation Iron Dawn complete. Humanity stands. And as the stars shimmered beyond the glass, one truth echoed across every surviving ship, every hidden outpost, and every scarred world. Humanity was here to stay. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the cosmos. See you next time. Weeks had passed since the great battle, the one everyone thought was the last. The railgun, our final gambit, our last hope, now stood silent. Its massive barrel, once glowing with unimaginable power, was now cold. Its circuits, which had pulsed with the energy to save humanity, were dim. Out in the void, the asteroid field drifted in an eerie quiet, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. It was filled with the broken pieces of our ships and the memories of those who fought and fell. But peace, we were learning, was a fragile thing. As always, it was temporary. Here in the control room of the orbital station, I sat before my console, my eyes scanning the long-range sensor displays. They were tired, bloodshot from lack of sleep, but my heart refused to rest. The galaxy was just too quiet. And quiet, as I had learned the hard way, was never safe. Anything, Mara? Commander Rains's voice cut through the low hum of the station. He stepped up beside me, his presence a familiar comfort in the tense atmosphere. I shook my head, not taking my eyes off the screen. Just debris and static, Commander. The usual ghosts. I sighed, leaning closer to the display. But something feels wrong. He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting towards the viewport, towards the endless sea of stars. You're not the only one who feels it. Across the room, the sounds of survival filled the air. Engineers worked tirelessly, repairing systems pushed to their breaking point. Soldiers, their faces etched with a grim determination, trained in silence. We, the survivors, carried a new kind of weight. It was a heavy cocktail of pride and fear. We had won, yes. We had stared into the abyss and spat in its eye. But in doing so, we had also awakened something vast, something ancient. We'd made a lot of noise, and now the entire universe was listening. Hours bled into one another. My shift was nearly over when the sensors flickered. A single faint signal appeared on the screen, a tiny blip in a sea of nothing. It was repeating. Rains, who had been observing from nearby, frowned. That's not human code. My fingers flew across the control panel, isolating the transmission. Zooming in, I reported, my voice tight. The frequency was distorted. The sound that came through the speakers was harsh and uneven, but beneath the noise there was a pattern, a rhythm. It was almost like a heartbeat. I froze. A cold dread washed over me. Commander, it's coming from the wreckage of the alien flagship. Impossible, Rains said, his voice sharp. That ship was atomized. We saw it. Then what's sending this? I asked, my own question hanging heavy in the air. As if in response, the signal grew louder, stronger, more focused. This wasn't the echo of a dying machine. This was deliberate. This was a message. And then a voice cut through the static. It was deep, metallic, and it whispered a chilling message that seemed to crawl directly into our minds. You are not ready. The room went cold. Every sound, every movement, ceased. The engineers stopped their repairs. The soldiers froze mid-drill. We all stood paralyzed, listening to the ghost in the machine. The voice repeated, slower this time, enunciating each word as if it wanted to be certain we understood. We are not the only ones. My hands trembled as they hovered over the console. Not the only ones? I whispered, the words barely audible. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. The screen went black. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any explosion we had ever endured. For a long time, no one spoke. No one dared to. Finally, Rains broke the silence, his voice a low growl. If that wasn't them... He paused, turning to stare out the viewport into the endless, suffocating dark. Then who was it? As if on cue, something shimmered in the distance, far beyond the asteroid belt. A faint blue light pulsed in the darkness. It spread slowly at first, then faster, like a signal bouncing from one star system to the next. A cosmic ripple in a pond of infinite black. Rains turned back to me, his eyes blazing with a new, terrifying resolve. Record everything. Send a priority message to High Command. Tell them humanity isn't done fighting yet. I could only nod, my voice barely a whisper. Sir, it looks like the universe just woke up. Outside, the faint blue pulse grew brighter, then split into several trails of light, each one streaking toward a different, distant part of the galaxy. A new threat was mobilizing, and somewhere out there in the unfathomable depths of space a new fleet was forming. It wasn't the enemy we knew. It wasn't human. It was something older, something silent. We had won the battle, but the war, the real war, was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Who do you think sent the message? Until next time, stay curious. Space was never truly silent. There was always a faint hum, a kind of cosmic background noise, the whisper of distant radiation, the echo of dying stars, the very heartbeat of the universe itself. But now, something new was moving through that silence, something cold and vast. On the command deck of Horizon Station, the last bastion of human presence in the outer rim, Commander Rains stood hunched over a glowing holographic map. Dozens of tiny signals flickered across the screen, faint, ancient, and utterly terrifyingly unfamiliar. They were ghosts on the radar, phantoms in the void. They appeared last night, said Mara, his second in command, her voice a low, steady hum against the quiet thrum of the station. At first we thought it was sensor ghosts, maybe interference from that nebula cloud. But they're moving, sir, slowly, and in perfect formation. Rains leaned closer, his eyes tracing the paths of the phantom signals. These weren't like any alien ships they had ever encountered. In the last war, enemy vessels blazed with energy, screamed across the comms, and left trails of radiation in their wake. These were different. There were no power trails, no communication beacons, not even the faintest whisper of engine signatures, just silent, cold objects drifting together through the endless night. How many? He asked, his voice tight. 47 confirmed, Mara replied, her fingers dancing across a console. But we suspect there could be more, hidden behind those interference clouds. We just can't get a clear scan. Rains let out a slow, measured breath. 47 unknown ships. And their trajectory? Where are they heading? Mara's eyes, usually so full of analytical calm, met his with a flicker of dread. Straight toward human space, sir, on a direct course for the inner colonies. The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Around them, the usually unflappable bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity had just barely clawed its way back from the brink after the last war. The colonies were still rebuilding. The fleet was a fraction of its former strength and morale was fragile. They couldn't handle another war. Not this soon. "What about the alien remnants?" Rains asked, his mind racing through strategic possibilities. "The survivors from the last conflict, any movement from their side?" "None," Mara said, shaking her head. "Their transmissions went dark right after we intercepted that strange signal a few weeks ago. It's almost like—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's like they're afraid of something." Rains frowned. The idea of the Galaxy-S former apex predators being afraid was a concept he couldn't quite process. He turned his attention back to the map, his gaze fixed on the approaching silent fleet. They weren't broadcasting identification codes. They weren't sending threats or ultimatums. They weren't even scanning the systems they passed through. They just moved, in perfect, synchronized silence. A silent armada. His thoughts drifted to Earth's last line of defense. The railgun satellite. A colossal weapon, humanity's greatest technological achievement, capable of accelerating a projectile to a fraction of the speed of light. It had been recharged, repositioned, and was standing guard over Earth's orbit, a silent sentinel of destructive power. But against an enemy this unknown, this alien, no one knew if it would even matter. Suddenly, one of the radar operators gasped, his voice cracking. "Commander, one of the signals just vanished." "Vanished," Rains repeated, snapping back to the present. "Did it explode? Break formation?" "No, sir. No explosion, no debris, no energy trace. It's like it just folded itself out of space." Before the shock of that statement could even settle in, another signal blinked out, and another. Within the span of 30 seconds, the entire formation was gone. The map, moments before a screen of impending doom, was now completely blank. The void was empty again. A chill crawled up Mara's spine. Where did they go?" she whispered, the question hanging in the tense air of the bridge. Before anyone could even begin to speculate, the entire station was bathed in a blinding red light as alarms blared to life. A klaxon screamed a frantic, piercing warning. "Commander!" the sensor chief yelled. "Massive, off-the-charts energy spike, directly behind us." "Impossible," Rains whispered, his blood turning to ice. "They were light years away. There's no FTL drive that fast. Nothing." On the main view screen, the familiar star field outside their viewport began to twist and warp. Space itself seemed to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by an unseen stone. They were not like any ship humanity had ever conceived of. They were impossibly long and smooth, like colossal monoliths carved from a single piece of obsidian, polished by eons of drifting through the void. The silent armada had arrived, and it was right on their doorstep. "Power levels?" Rains demanded, his voice a sharp crack in the stunned silence. "Unknown, sir," the tactical officer stammered. "Their readings they don't make sense. They're not using any energy type we can recognize, no fusion, no antimatter, nothing." The alien ships hung there in the blackness, silent and utterly still. Then a voice broke through the static on the comms. It was deep, impossibly deep and mechanical, layered with 1,000 echoes as if it were speaking across millennia. It said 2 words. "The cycle repeats." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving a profound and terrifying silence in its wake. Rains didn't answer. He was staring, mesmerized at the largest ship on the screen, a behemoth that dwarfed Horizon Station. It felt ancient, older than the railgun, older than the war, perhaps older than humanity itself. And across its impossibly smooth hull, words began to form, materializing slowly in glowing blue text. It was an alien script, a language of flowing, intricate symbols. "Your war woke us," The room fell utterly silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Their engines, if they could be called that, began to glow brighter, not with the familiar heat of propulsion, but with something deeper, something colder, something that felt ancient and alive. Raines's mind cleared. The shock gave way to the cold, hard instinct of a commander. He gave one quiet, resolute order. Charge the railgun. A ripple of disbelief went through the crew, but they followed the command without question. Mara swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the serene, terrifying beauty of the alien fleet. Sir, if they wanted us dead, they could have fired the second they arrived. They could have destroyed us without a thought. I know, Raines said softly, his gaze never leaving the view screen. That's what scares me. The station's lights dimmed as immense power was diverted to Earth's orbit, charging the planet-killer weapon light years away. The hum of the station deepened, a low thrum of desperate energy. They were plunged into absolute darkness and absolute silence. We have seen this before. Then nothing. Only silence. A silence deeper and more complete than the void of space itself. Humanity was adrift, blind, and alone in the dark, surrounded by gods or demons, with no way of knowing which. The judgment had begun.